Joe is here. Joe is going to be playing through the game while we talk to a couple members of our audio team. Undead Jazzy, do you want do you want to go by Undead Jazzy, or should I introduce you as Jack? I love it.
Jack will work.
Okay. Hey, this is Jack. Let's see, we've got two screens. Okay, that's because you're playing the game. Again, if you want to click and make the gameplay bigger, you can just click on that. We also have Jordan on his way, I believe.
So Brant suggests I talk about myself, which is my favorite hobby. So, hi everyone. My
I,
name is.
this is Jack. Thank you for joining us. You might have seen him already in the Bleed to Lead campaign. Came out and volunteered for that, which we're super grateful for. Yeah, and you're on the audio team. Is there, I don't really know. I know that we have a great audio team. I love everyone there, but you guys break into different specialties. Do you know what I mean? It's like I do this, I do this. How does the makeup of the audio team kind of work?
Yeah. So most of the audio team actually is fairly new. There's five of us, and Jordan is the only one that actually worked on SOD2. I've been with Undead for a little over a year, but yeah, we're broken up in a few different big chunks. I'm in charge of combat and zombies and guns and melee weapons and a lot of the fun stuff. Maxwell on our team is in control of Foley and environmental sounds and UI sounds. Jordan, our audio director, who should be joining us shortly, uh, kind of has his fingers in a lot of the soups, and he also is our vehicle guy. We also have a principal technical sound designer who touches everything, and we also have a programmer who makes all of our stuff work, and we are tremendously grateful for Ben.
I have a noob question. Is how does technical audio differ from like having a programmer who's hooking things up versus
So
someone who's like making sounds in a studio?
yeah, so there's kind of three steps in a sound getting in the game. There, you have to make a sound effect, which then is a file. You have to have the code set up to be able to play that sound effect, and then in the middle is how do you get someone like me who doesn't know code able to hook up that sound effect in the code. And so
Right.
usually through our tools, uh, our technical sound designer will help us with, or just setting up the whole system. Like James, our technical sound designer, will be the one who architects an entire. Here's how all of the wind sound in the world works, or here's how the player makes sound. Some of it is in code, but since we're Unreal Engine, some of it's also in Blueprint, which is a visual scripting. So you don't necessarily have to know the ones and zeros. There are other ways to make the tools work for us. Hi,
Right.
Jordan.
That's really helpful. I mean, this is classic, it's multiple disciplines to make a game. It's like it's art, it's entertainment, it's the tech side to actually make it work. Welcome, Jordan. Jordan enters the chat. Ba boom, boom,
Hey,
boom,
yeah.
boom. Yay!
Not sure what that was. Maybe I don't know, permission issues or something. But
No problem. Glad you're here.
it wasn't me. Maybe it was me. I don't know.
It definitely wasn't. I take the blame.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I'm Jordan, audio director now. I guess for about 2 years, but on SOD2, I was uh, sound designer for most of the project, or for all the project. Really, I didn't become audio director until a couple of uh, years into all the DLCs and stuff. Yeah, I think I just passed the 9 year mark in
Oh,
the
wow.
beginning of the month. So I'm one of the
Oh my
one of the
gosh.
OGs
OG
at
to the
this point.
lab.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nine
that's
nine years
impressive.
is a long time at a game company, but yeah, clearly I like it here. Going good.
Chat is already bringing up a clip that we posted, quite some time ago of how to make the blood plague sound, and it was a soldering iron in water and like sizzling and into like cooking oatmeal, and it was really disgusting to get that like visceral, meaty, bubbly sound.
Oh yeah, yeah. A sound designer who's since left us, Alex, did a lot of that stuff, and there was a point where we were trying to figure out like how we make the blood plague guys different from the normal ones, and they even had a. I think the effect has since been taken off because I think it had some performance problems, but they had a bubbling skin like VFX on them, and so we thought, all
Right.
right, we'll put a sound with that too, and it kind of gives it a little bit of like gameplay messaging that they're nearby you, right? You hear the little like sizzling
You hear
of
that
the.
little tell.
And yeah, I think the sound was made with like a soldering iron and like some kind of liquid and like oatmeal and stuff, kind of like layered up. So, but we had to get rid of it. I think we had to get rid of the effect. I think it was just like a performance hit because we were starting to put more and more zombies on screen and effects like that, right? All these bombs are going off, so start having to kind of make concessions for the gameplay. Right?
Already have some audience questions coming in about. Can you talk us through how you made some of the freak sounds? I mean, especially called out like the Juggernaut and the Screamer. There's definitely lots of theories on how what elements you know combined to make those sounds.
The freak specifically.
Yeah, do you remember like the screamers or the jugs? They're like the jug roar and also just like
Yeah.
scream.
So Kevin was our audio director at the time. Had kind of established the voices of that stuff from SOD1, and so we made the decision that we'd kind of honor the sort of like direction that we took with them from SOD1, and so the original like source material was his own voice as kind of like one of the main layers of each, and so
I
he's one of the
forgot. I
main.
didn't hear about that. He must have ripped his voice out that day in the studio.
Yeah. So he's like almost all of them in like a layer of his voice is in almost all of them, right? And then I think different freaks have sort of different additive layers. So like the feral, I think, has some like animal sounds kind of layered over his right bass performance. The bloater has like goopy stuff. I think he put like yogurt in his mouth too, right? Like to like make gross noises. That's not uncommon, right? Like to like if you're trying to do something
Really?
unique.
Is that a thing? Is that a
Oh yeah.
thing? Oh my gosh. I didn't know that. They're both like, yes, gargle yogurt. Yes. Time
Yogurt or
honored.
I mean, yeah, just like you kind of make these weird decisions to try and get a sound that you couldn't get any other way, right?
So is that, I mean, again, this is a high level, but is that considered Foley? Because I sometimes am curious, when we're watching the movies is the first time that I was introduced to Foley, and it was more like I'm clip-clopping a lady's high heels, watching her walk. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what is Foley in the audio world? How does it work in games?
Yeah, I think Jack and I can maybe sort of tag team this one, but Foley's kind of like a loaded term because
Mm,
um, it means sort of different things like in the game world versus the film world. And it originally
gotcha.
came from the film world from the sort of original Foley artist. I think his name was Jack Foley. And so his name gets credited with the sort of art form. And in film, what it generally means is any sound that's made by a character on the screen is a Foley sound. So it's like so it has to so it's kind of narrowly defined like that, right? Like so it's like a footstep or like the character like opening the door. It's like objects in the film being manipulated by characters, and so like and you'll see Foley artists who perform the action to the screen, right? They act out the sounds in time with the picture, right? But games is a bit different. I'll let Jack kind of take it away from there.
Yeah, in games, it's a little bit more focused to the sounds that the character creates with their body. So like their cloth movements, their body movements. A subset of Foley is the footsteps, and so it's not because as Jordan was saying in film, like a character picking up a glass and putting it down, a Foley artist would do that. A character knocking over a bunch of papers would still be a Foley artist, like performing those sounds to picture. But in audio, we would consider both those things a different category. Would they probably be like an interactables category or an objects category? Because for us, that's a different system, technically, as well as how we'd want to prioritize those sounds during gameplay would be different than we would do Foley. Because in games, especially in all audio in media, but especially games, there's like a hierarchy of importance of sounds, and depending on what's going on in the scene, you want to lower some sounds and raise other sounds. And in many situations, like say in Joe's gameplay right now, Foley's not a big deal. Like, the attack sounds and the zombie sounds are a bigger deal. So Foley might actually be getting lowered in volume here. And as he's running away from the zombies and they're not around him, maybe that Foley is going to come back up. But for games, the Foley is really just like the sounds of the characters, and anything else is categorized differently than in film or in TV, where it's so much is Foley.
So then would you call the rest of it sound design, sound effect? And I know sometimes there's just like different terms. I'm just curious, like all the different kind of ways of making the game sound good.
I mean, it's all of it is wiggling airwaves.
That's that should just be the new name, airwave manipulator, the new role name.
But yeah, like the three main categories of game audio would be music, voice, sound effects,
Nice.
and
Okay.
each of those again is kind of loaded with stuff. But yeah, like Foley is kind of a subset of sound effects. So it's a little different in that regard, but there's less specificity on Foley being its own category. It's pretty much sound effects, music, VO, and those are all usually can be different people, or in some smaller projects it's the same person. Some of that's outsourced, some of it's in-house. Kind of just depends.
Cool. Can you talk a little bit about the voices? You just mentioned that, and just like all the character voices in the game, how those make it from. At what point does the audio team get involved? Do you guys get the script and then begin doing auditions with voice actors, or what is that process like?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, this is like another one of those things that kind of varies, I think, by company. Sort of the way Undead Labs has handled VO, and it's a bit of a collaboration between the audio department and the design. And so before we even get a script, we sort of take on the responsibility of like setting up some of the technical side of like how the dialogue is going to play back, and that's just some of the sort of system stuff, like setting up the wise events, for example, of like all the different ways dialogue is going to play back, and kind of providing the narrative designers just like the tools they need to just play the lines, right? And to give them the instructions on how a line needs to get through the wise system. There's a bit of like a build process for taking a wave file and getting it into the game. But when it comes to like the creative part of it, audio is mostly there in a logistical sense. Like in the same way we sort of set up the technical stuff, we also kind of help just facilitate. Like the recording process with the signatory. So the signatory is responsible for like getting the actor scheduled and recorded and handling all the sort of like union rules and stuff like that. And so we kind of um, we get that signatory hired and kind of hand off scripts and stuff once those are available. But we're not really in part, and we do help with the casting, right? We're a voice in the room for casting. But like once like the scripts are ready to go and the signatories lined up and the actors are recording, we're kind of out of the picture then. Like the designers and the writers, they're there to like facilitate some of that work and like
Okay.
and some of the direction for during recording. But at that point, we've kind of handed it off uh, to the design team and to the writers to when they get into to the recording session, they can do any of the nitty gritty, like, oh, we need it read like this, or we need another take, like all that kind of stuff. We don't partake in.
Gotcha.
So we're kind of like a middleman in a sense to get the audio or to get the dialogue in and help facilitate it, but like much of the creative decision making we don't help out with.
Okay. We have a special guest in chat, and it's Alex Thomas. Hey, Alex, welcome. And he has actually a pretty interesting question. How do you evolve a live service game's audio while staying true to its already defined palette? What a good question.
Especially, he's like a lawyer. Like he only asks the questions he knows the answers to. Yeah. So good to see you, Alex, in here. Yeah, it's a challenging thing because like this game, especially this game, right, was never like thought of to that was gonna last this long, right? Like when we were initially just like trying to get to the vanilla release, we're just plugging in sounds, we're just trying to make stuff work, we're fixing our bugs and stuff. But that's a different mindset than planning for supporting the product for however many years it's been since then, like 5 years or something since the vanilla came out. And so um, the it's yeah, so it becomes a lot of reusing of stuff too, right? The problem when you haven't planned for sort of continued support is you're kind of locked into like a memory budget, right? We've like maxed that out for the first release effectively because we've like put all the sounds in for our best foot forward, right? In the initial vanilla release, and then when we start having to support all this other stuff, we start having to kind of pick and choose the assets that we're going to make new because we have such a small margin of room left to fill out. And so people with keen ears might start noticing like, oh, there's some sounds that I hear a lot at the same time, but maybe they're pitched up a lot or pitched down a lot. Like we kind of mask that we've reused things by doing like processes on them that are free that are just that don't require making a new sound, but that we can just do with the software and pitch something way down, for instance, or add an effect or something.
Right. So just being able to be creative and get way more out of one file.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's been a lot of like how we've stretched the lifespan, I guess, of like sort of the original palette of sounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if if we were to do it again, we would start thinking of different ways of scalability, right? If we know we're gonna have an additional 10 new weapons show up after we've released the first game, we might look into investing in technology that lets us better load and unload the content that we need. So we're only like bringing in the assets that we need for that particular moment. So that's
part of it, like so that the game runs better, right? Is that
right,
part of the optimization?
That's like it's like optimizations, managing your memory better. Maybe investing like less in certain areas, like so sometimes we make like tons of different variations of a sound, that eats up more space, right? So if we know we're going to need that memory later, we might make one or two less variations of something because we know we need that space for the future. So there's like some technical things you can do to kind of buy the memory back, and some creative decision making you can do to sort of save the memory. So
Alex has officially sabotaged the dev team with dev questions. That's very funny. Well, let's get into Tragic Wolf had one about making like fighting and gore sounds, and just curious of like what is the kind of the balance? Are you making the fighting and gore sounds? How much is files that you have? How much is making new sound effects through the Foley process? Do you buy any files? How does that work? Hey, that's you.
yeah, right, combat stuff. There's a lot of layers that go on there. One of the stats that we like to look up, I think like our data analytics team calls it a vanity stat because it's not important to anybody but us. is, how many
It's
zombies have
important
been?
to me. I want
Yeah,
to know.
it was like how many zombies have been killed over like right the entire of all the players playing, right? It's like an aggregate kill count, and the last time we checked was a couple of years ago, but it was in the billions. Um,
Oh my gosh, in the
and
billions.
so yeah, and so when we hear that, we're thinking, we go like, oh wow, that means like a lot of people have heard a lot of the same combat sounds over and over and over again. So we must have done something right that stuff sounds still, I guess, interesting, or like that never like got assuming never got too boring for folks to always like kill zombies, right? And we like to think the audio had something to do with that, I guess. That made it
Absolutely.
interesting to do. And so yeah, so there's tons of layers. I think Jack probably knows a little thing or two about this, so he can kind of get into sort of what some of those layers are and kind of how they work together to sort of keep it fresh, right? Keep the mix fresh.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the interesting thing, especially in working in a zombie game, is you can assume that it's going to get gross. So there's no shortage of opportunities to record things ourselves, and common things are breaking celery sticks or bell peppers or coconuts or fruits and vegetables. Lemons are good ones to get a nice like juice out of. So
Squishy sound.
yeah, and so the anatomy of a gore sound is also dependent on the anatomy of what you're hitting. So if you're hitting a head, you need more crunchy stuff in there. If you're hitting a
Woo!
torso, it's probably a bit more squishy. So there's it really is one of the really fun things to do, making gore sounds, because in many cases there's also just there's not wrong answers. Yeah, and even crazy stuff can be used. Like I know Jordan and Alex recorded some goop that you get in like a Hello Fresh box, like that, like those freezy packs.
I
Like
get those.
yeah, like if
Yeah,
you let
yeah, those like yeah, if you let it melt a little bit, yeah.
some
Ice
really
pack
satisfying
sounds.
goop sounds in a bucket they got with that stuff. So
Ooh.
yeah.
There was a question that was specific to and this might be too specific, but if either of you know about the blood plague feral. So they said it sounds like a basketball when you hit it on the head. I don't know, Jordan, is that something you remember? It's really specific to, it's not
Huh.
just the feral, it's the blood plague feral.
Yeah, well, like because they have a like chitinous
Yeah, because
gold
they have,
piece, right, to
right,
like
they have
protect
that, like,
their
yeah,
head.
that football helmet over their brains.
Yeah, I can't tell you exactly like what that sound is or how it was made.
Yeah.
I just don't remember. But we did think about that specifically, right? And then we knew that he was armored up. So that should sound different when you hit him in the head
Mm-hmm.
when he's got armored on versus when you've broken it off. I think we have a sound for it breaking off too. And so yeah, I think it was probably just like what we call sweeteners. So we have like this sort of a normal set of all the impact sounds that every weapon's got sort of a base set, right? The wrench has a impact, and the bat has its own set, and all those things, and then a sweetener layer is added on top. So we know when we hit that thing in its armored head, we can play an additional layer to sort of sell the sound of weapon X hitting the head of that thing.
Yeah. Pat just
So
brought
that's
up the favorite sound effects with the distant landmine explosions added with update 33. I was going to ask on that because yeah, landmines kind of a just in this latest update. How did making that sound come about? You guys use some real landmines? That's really what I want to know. Just tell me.
Yeah, there's it's funny, like I think actually made those sounds a long time ago, because we were just making we were sort of, the audio team was kind of ahead of some of the artwork at one point, and we were thinking just like, we need to make a bunch of explosions. There's gonna be all sorts of bombs
All
and
kinds of
grenades
types
and
of
stuff.
explosions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just kind of like just started making them, and one of them was called like flame fagasse, which is like I guess like an improvised like fireball kind of explosive, and it wasn't ever so we made that, but we didn't put it on anything, because it just, like, the art team didn't make something that fit the sound that we made, right? We were just ahead. But the landmine thing came around for 33, and it was like, oh, they're using like a fireball effect. We've got the perfect sound that's just been waiting to get used. Let's throw it in. So
That's
that's
awesome.
the landmines.
You
Like,
guys were just you guys were just ahead of the curve.
it's
Weird.
like, yeah, I mean, like just a rare moment where like you just had something ready to go, and like, and hey, that it works, and like, yeah. So that's
I'm going to
yeah.
I'm going to jump in really fast with the trivia question, just because we're coming to the end. Man, these half-hour segments go by so fast. I can't believe it. But I want to get to some other questions and hear you guys kind of just talk more about sound design, etc. But meanwhile, just have chat. This is your question for the trivia for the zine giveaway. This is going to work a little bit differently because we have a really tricky question that Jordan came up with for y'all. And we're going to go with Price is Right rules. So as close as you can get to the correct number without busting. Can't go over. As close as you can get to the correct number for this is the question. How many sound effect assets, files, are in the game? How many sound effect assets, number of files, are in the game? Closest answer without going over. Well, I'm gonna let you know y'all are low. Y'all are low.
Yeah, it's fun to
Y'all are
watch
low.
these numbers fly up.
Bring it up a bit. But meanwhile, there's another good one from Alex. It was the weirdest source for a sound recorded. Have any fun stories on recording source sounds from unusual or unexpected sources?
Sure, I have a story. This wasn't for this game actually, but as sound designers like have just their own personal libraries, right? That they just gather sound effects over the years. So, so a lot of our own personal work or recordings from years ago always make it into whatever projects we're currently on. And so a long time ago, I was with a company on a game called Hellgate London, and we did a recording session at like a research farm at a university, and it was a pig farm, and so we were recording the pigs there, like they're in pig pens, and like one of the like doctor researchers was like, well, all right, what else can we do? Like, oh, we can do the castrations, and we had no idea like what we were getting in. We did like, it was just like okay. They took us to this like room where they had all these like baby piglets, and I don't like, and they performed the procedure right there. It's like it's very quick and kind of not very like surgical. If anyway, I don't have to go into detail, but those little guys were screaming their heads off. Like my boss at the time, like I can see like his face over the shoulder of like the researcher and the little piglet who's upside down with his head like between his legs. I'm like got the mic on the piglet, but my boss has got a view of like the surgery, quote unquote, and his face was just like complete horror, and like it was crazy. Yeah.
That is wild. I don't think anyone has that story unless
We were not expecting that at
a
all.
farmer. Yeah, sure. Like
Yeah.
someone who was raising livestock, but not to be like, let me get this from my library. I might not ever have this chance again. No one's gonna believe this.
So yeah, that was a crazy day.
Alex says sorry he asked. This is very, very interesting. Either of you have a favorite memory creating the sound effects for the game? There's also an interesting question just on the UI, on sounds for the UI, which is something I wouldn't have thought of. If either of you want to tackle either of those?
Yeah, favorite memories. We had a lot of like early morning recording sessions when we were doing the vehicles. We had to like pick a spot in Seattle that was like in a quiet park, and had to get out there super early and get through our punch list. We ran through like we were doing this like for many days in a row, like getting vehicles. So it was just kind of fun being out at the crack of dawn, like recording cars. And oh, and the UI stuff. I mean, like gosh, it's been a while, but the direction was basically like, yeah, kind of like mechanical and snappy kind of sounds, because the artwork was sort of kind of flat, I guess. Like, so it was hard to like the art didn't necessarily like say like, oh, this needed to be like goopy or made out of paper. Like if you remember the SOD1, is like the art direction there was like everything was like a journal, so it was kind of, it made sense that all the sounds would be kind of like based on paper and turning pages and penciling in stuff like that. But we didn't quite have as like clear of a design to work from, so we just kind of had to go with something more like aesthetic, and like, so the direction was like what's like snappy and kind of like and mechanical. So we used lots of like clicky sounds and like sounds from like anything mechanical, and like even like gun clicks and stuff like that, and just kind of mashed it all up and ran it through like lots of processing, and made tons of them. So I think what keeps them interesting is like there's tons and tons of just very different clicks for almost everything you do. So we knew like there's a lot of menus and things that get really deep. So it's like backing out of menus, back and going into menus. Like everything's got a unique sound, but they all live in the same sort of family. So the idea was like trying to keep it fresh, because we knew you'd be like just doing tons of clicking around in there.
So much of it. That's awesome.
So yeah, there's just a ton of different sounds to kind of keep it interesting. It's just not always just
you guys.
So.
Thank you so much. We're at time. That flew by. Thank you guys so much. This was super fascinating. I wish we could just talk about it for another hour. Thank you, Joe, for playing. Everyone, thank you so much. Jordan and Jazzy. Jack, thank you so much. Really appreciate you jumping on here and telling us more about the audio in the game. Thank you, Joe, for playing.
Thanks, everybody.